Hey everybody, this is Joe. Thank you for watching my Giga Texas construction update video.
Well, starting another week here at Giga Texas, and production is ramping back up. I had this kind of an interesting top-down shot showing kind of the activity of the vehicles coming out of the factory, and it's kind of neat just to see it from this perspective. They're still using that procedure where the employees drive it down the ramp and then they get out of the vehicle and it continues its autonomous driving all the way to the end of line. So it looks like this is a change of procedure. Now over at the end of line facility, since it's early on Monday, they're just getting started. Vehicles are arriving at that facility for processing and then heading over to the outbound lot. On the east side at that temporary staging lot, we see many more Model Y standards have been produced and are being stored on that side of the factory. Again, I'm not 100% sure why that is the case, but it is an interesting development. Now, a couple of things to look for in the video that I want to highlight here in the intro briefly. Up at the electrical switch yard, not only has that second large transformer been delivered, but now equipment is being delivered in large crates for that transformer. In addition to that, more work is being done on the slab and catch basin for the third large transformer. So that work and additional infrastructure work being done at the electrical switch yard. Over at Cortex 2, of course, the big things that we're watching right now is what's going on with the transformers, the electrical systems, the screw type piers, and the bracing or the beams that they're putting on to the low level screw type piers all on the west side. Now it really does look a lot like another Megapack is going in. This is pretty much the same construction that they used over at Megapack 2, which has now been renamed the Gigafactory Texas data center battery electric storage system. So I think it's pretty clear a third large Megapack system is being prepared for installation. Over on the east side, the big work is on the cooling plant, the chiller plant, part 1 and 2. Part 2 is getting more of the form work, rebar, and preparation for that perimeter wall. In addition to the raised dirt section in the middle, and they're working more on those concrete manifold kind of bunkers next to the main building. At part 1, we see that fiber reinforced polymer beams continuing to be installed on 4 of the 6 kind of square basins that have been built. It's getting quite tall. In fact, it's the same height as Cortex 2 now, and some additional pipe work is being installed onto that scaffolding or that superstructure today as well. A lot more to see in the video, so without further ado, let's get into it and let's fly around and see what Giga Texas looks like on this start of another work week.
If you would like to support my efforts, please consider using these links, which will be in the video description. If you are interested in Tesla products, you can help yourself and support me by using my referral code. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons on my YouTube video, as this helps as well. Thank you. My drones are ready and raring to go. Let's go flying over Giga Texas. Well, it's a beautiful morning to fly, as you can tell, and things are starting to get underway for production. Taking a look at the outbound lot, a grouping of cars off to the left, and some transport operations underway. At the bottom of the screen, we can see some of the Model Ys driving autonomously over to these 4 sorting lanes and then proceeding into the end-of-line facility for its final processing. And it does look like most of the production, at least this part of the day so far, is Model Y performances. And we'll have a view of some vehicles leaving the factory a little bit later in the video. On the north end here, we see the direct delivery center, some vehicles on the left for deliveries. Of course, all the new blocks next to the dirt by the roadway. The Tesla Semi is not charging today, so it's off doing some other duties. And I'm going to fly south here along this grass area over the wash rack and the test track, and kind of maneuver over the building once again. Take a look at what's going on with the south end superchargers. Another vehicle arriving on the left over the rumble strips. And this lot directly ahead of us will start filling up today. By the time I ended up leaving from flying, I noticed a lot of vehicles there. This is that grouping that we saw a little bit earlier. I've had some people ask if the wheels on these vehicles are the darker gray rather than the lighter gray, which is a shift that we've been seeing across the other companies or other factories at other countries. And I didn't really get low enough to take a look, so next time I will try to get a better view of that. As we get over to the staging yard, this is where a lot of the transformers are waiting. This is that new kind of a workshop that has been set up with this fenced off section. And we see some more materials here behind that workshop. Of course, a lot more of the transformers being stored here also. And as we pass over this red and or orange and white tint, we see it's these mobile superchargers. Those are used periodically to help with areas where maybe it's for holidays or higher traffic for the public. As we pass along over to this side of the site, we can see this workshop where they've been putting together a lot of these V4 superchargers. Looks like there's at least 6 of them here, more of the older ones on the right, and of course the Powerwall portable chargers in that section as well. I also noticed that many of the materials here next to the fence at the bottom of the screen have been moved. A lot of them are now over on the opposite side, just past all of this material that we see at the bottom center of the screen. You can see some of the unwrapped packaging on the upper left. But all of these being moved over here kind of signals something has changed. Maybe they're ready for them to be getting ready to go into the factory soon. But this is a great top level view of that whole area and how all of that materials have changed and the rest of the staging yard. Now, next to the power lines on the ground, we see a lot of the steel items. Some of those are beams for interior work. Others are racks for cable management. But that material over there seems to be semi-stable as far as the amount of materials that are being stored there. In the middle section here, we see a lot more of the steel items and a delivery today. And I try to get down low enough to look at what this is. Hard to tell for sure, but it might be some of those FRP or fiber reinforced polymer beams that are being used over at the Cortex 2 chiller plant. Maybe these are being stored temporarily until they're needed for phase or part 2 of that chiller plant. Here's a good look at some of these interesting red and white racks and some other kind of box-like structures near this location. Also, some of the racks for the castings are being put onto yard trucks and moved around the site, so they are clearing them out from over on this part of the area. We noticed that a lot of the concrete vault segments have been moved to this side of the fence in the center of the staging yard. Also, we see more of the materials that are associated with production at the bottom of the screen and the plastic wrapping, and some are being put on yard truck and moved over to the east side of the factory, which we will see here momentarily. So bring the drone up a little bit higher, go over the power lines. I'll bring the drone down here. We'll take a look at the final work that's being done at this caisson, then we'll cross over the highway and look at some of the work on the other side of the highway. There's been a lot of cleanup on the south side of River Road. All of the equipment and the setup that was for the tunnel boring machines have been moved away. We just have a few more of these green pipes that are being pushed into the tunnel at the caisson, but otherwise most of this area has been cleaned up, which may be signifying that that work is virtually completed now. Next to this part of the site, the work continues with this large excavation. Of course, the caisson with the semicircular ring and manhole covers, this large concrete vault extending all the way down to the bottom. And you can see some more of that green pipe that has been pushed through the tunnel. And now it has a few connections that are going into that tall vault. Here's a great view with the workers for census scale of how all this is coming together. Now bring the drone pitch back up. We're going to fly along the west berm. We're going to get up to where the exit point is for the Model Ys, and I'll have a kind of a special view of how those vehicles are exiting the factory here today. As I mentioned, the production is coming along pretty quickly for a Monday morning. I did take a higher level view looking straight down of some of the activity. This is sped up, of course, but what we can see is the process of the workers driving the vehicles down the ramp, getting out, and then sending them autonomously over to the end of line continues. So this has been a change, and I don't know, I suspect that there's some internal changes to the routing for the vehicles, and that's why they're doing this. Maybe it's just not as convenient for moving it through autonomously just inside the wall. But nevertheless, that was a really quick view of how fast the production line was going this morning. And real time, I'd say there was maybe a car every 30 to 40 seconds, maybe a minute, depending on how you calculate that. But great view of that work. The berm here has been filled all the way back in, so all of that trench work and pipe installation seems to be completed. At this platform, we can see this large item being hooked up to the crane and moved up onto that platform. I'll follow it along here with the zoom in so we can get a good look at how this process works, and also a good view of this piece of equipment. Looks like it's got a large motor on it and a large enclosure, so maybe it's some sort of belt driven item. If you happen to know what it is, please let me know in the comment section. But this is about as good of a view as I can get of this large item being moved up to the platform. And with the worker, it gives you a sense of that scale as well. So continue to see a lot of equipment being delivered and moved up into this part of the factory, which is where the structural packs are prepared and tested and then made ready for the production line. So we're going to pass this blue bin where we would normally see cans for the 4680s recycled. Still don't see much of that happening. Haven't seen that in a few weeks, so maybe they'll be starting that up here very soon. I'm going to continue to pass the northwest corner and come up here towards where the perimeter fence takes this kind of a dog leg. This is where we've been seeing a lot of the work with trenching for that purple reclaimed water pipe that has gone through the trench that you see on the right hand side of the screen, kind of covered in black material. And it's passing all the way over to the east side. The other thing I want to show you is on my previous video, all of these rack mounts and castings were completely removed from the site on this yard, and I wasn't sure if that signaled some big change or what. It looks like they've all been moved back over here. So whatever it was, they were doing some reconfiguration work, and some of these are the rack mounts that were being stored on that far southwest corner. More trench work still is underway here, and that may be part of the reason why they've had to move those away as well. Now, the north end of the plastics manufacturing and paint section, we just see all these stands for the bumpers. Some of that silver wrapped items are put underneath that platform, but otherwise much of the other items, especially the Cybercab forms that we saw on my couple videos ago, all that has been moved away. So as I move over the power lines, I will position the drone to take a look into the melt center. One of the things that you will notice is on the right-hand side of the screen and along that whole northeast corner, most of the castings have been moved away, including all the Cybercab castings. We see most of them now on the racks. We see some getting ready for recycling with the forklifts in the center right of the screen, and a really large number of Model Y castings in these racks all along this side of the building. 2 large wooden crates have been delivered over by that blue device with the ducts going into the building. And as I keep the zoom in, we can see some trucks have been parked here, probably waiting with the driver coming out for picking up some of those trailers. We see more materials next to the secondary entrance and that construction entrance and those wooden crates. And keeping the zoom in, as we pass this platform, we start seeing a lot more of the equipment items, production equipment and crates all along this part of the site. And some of that's in that silver wrapped items that are in the center top of the screen. And much of this material we've seen over in that Southwest material staging yard over the last period of time, several months certainly. So more of that's being installed in the area where the Cybercab production line is located. We do see some trenching next to the wall of the stamping machine section and the cooling plant. Kind of maneuver the drone back around onto the east side, take a look at this material staging yard with some of the concrete items, some more of that green pipe as well, and a good look at downtown Austin, the upper left, the multi-level parking garage just next to this set of ponds. We can also see that trench work and excavation work just to the south of the intersection of River Road. And as I continue to fly off to the east, I'll pan the drone around, get a good look at the River Road's extension, the berm work, some of the steel corrugated pipes, and the final work that's being done to prepare the grade over on top of the manifolds that have been added in here. We also see in the upper left of the screen where some more pipes are being worked on that will connect eventually over to this entire drainage system. But a great look also at the graded section that is pretty close to being completed. And then we'll start seeing what they're going to do next here. As I mentioned, here's those pipes that go underneath Robotic Avenue and connect the 2 drainage ditches together. And also, while we're here, a good view of some of the materials at a lower altitude of this staging yard. Again, many of these are pipes and manifolds and other items that are being used both at Cortex 2 and also down in the south end of the factory with Cortex 1. This is another good view of the temporary staging lot and superchargers that some of which are the V4, as you can see, the white ones on the left, and then the older ones with the red. But also, all of these are Model Y standards that have been produced, and they continue to accumulate on this side of the site. As mentioned before on previous videos, this is usually an overflow lot where they're waiting for something. I'm not sure exactly what that might be for the Model Y standards, or maybe they're grouping them for some other purpose, but it is something I will keep an eye on. As we fly over the parking lot, I'll stop here briefly at the new complex of trailers where we have the Welcome Center, training, and some other offices that are under operation here. And as we get closer into Cortex 2, we can see a lot of activity here on the west side, particularly on the ground with those screw-type piers. We see the beams being added on top. As we talked about what we were going to expect, this is extremely reminiscent of what we saw with Megapack 2 under its construction. The same piers, the same beams, the same overall concept. So I think it's pretty clear that this will be another Megapack site. The biggest question is just how large is this going to be? And at the pace that they're going, I would imagine that we may start seeing Megapacks arriving on site in the next few weeks. Now you can tell that they are extending the piers to the north along this section. They are in fact putting in some of the piers right now. You can see those kind of tubes into the ground, the same formation as the section we were just looking at. And then they'll put the top circular caps on, and then we'll see the beams added as well. Now, the crane has been busy with bringing some of the equipment onto these platforms, and also helping with moving some of the platform tops onto the piers in this section of the site that's coming into view. And you can get a good sense of those piers, kind of those top, circular pipes sticking up out of the ground. You can see the beams on the ground were put on top with the circular kind of plate, and how the rest of it's all coming together. So more of those platforms are on the ground waiting for their in time for installation. And as I pan the drone up, we see another large section here of earthwork that is being finalized, and it's going on top of the excavations with the blue water pipe. Here's a great overall view of all those areas that we just visited. And as I pull away, I will try to give you a better view of the entire west side. Also, the workshops that are below the drone here, with some more work that they are doing with conduit and the cabling. And then as we look across towards the building itself, you can tell that more of the conduit risers have been finalized here. Most of the trenching have been filled in, and there's just a few remaining. And then all of this is going to be very similar to what we saw on the south side, with screw type piers, platforms, transformers, and other electronic equipment. On the north end, we get a good look at the trenching that is being filled back in. Looks like most of the conduit and the covering has been finished up, and now they're filling in all the trenches. In addition to that, we see some very large deliveries being made today. You can tell the heavy lift trailer, just what that looks like. It's kind of a low lift over height one also. And you can see with the workers the size of these kind of plastic wrapped deliveries, how big they really are. And they're getting them prepared to be moved inside with a large forklift, it looks like. I'll kind of maneuver the drone around. You can get a better view of what that appears like. And based on that receiving door, these items just barely fit inside. This is all part of finishing off much of the supporting equipment, the cooling systems, and electrical systems inside to support the data center. A nice pan across here just to show you the amount of activity, trenching, and different kinds of pipes that are being installed all throughout this section, and kind of bridging the gap between the battery cathode plant and the Cortex 2 facility. And there's an extensive amount of infrastructure and utilities underneath the ground here. As we pass along towards the middle part of the building, we can see the HDPE pipe being pulled through on these trenches on the kind of left side of the screen, that black pipe. And on the right, we can see more rebar cages being fashioned. Those are going to be used here for the bases of the walls, with nice view of some of the formwork and a section of wall that's been poured already. And the raised dirt section will eventually be pushed against the walls, and then it will allow for that large slab on top. And it'll be a mirror image of what we see with part one of the cooling system coming up here very soon. But I'll keep the zoom in so you can get a view of this crane, the forms, the workers, the rebar that's being put along the base here, and also where they're working on these kind of manifolds or bunkers that will have large water pipes. In fact, you can see some of the openings being formed in to the wall right now next to the main wall of the facility, and how all of this is coming together. And I'll just kind of pan around here a little bit more just so you can get a good 360 view all the way around the construction site. And as I mentioned, this is part one of two. Part two of one. Part one is coming into view with all of the FRP scaffolding, beams, and pipes. But first, I wanted to show you on the left-hand side of the screen, they are ripping up a large section of the asphalt that runs along the die shop. And I think that's so that they can do some additional work and then tie this all together. The part one of the chiller plant scaffolding is now taller than the Cortex 2 building itself. This is a great view of the pipes, some of which have these smaller holes in them all throughout this section, and those bunkers or manifolds at the bottom of the screen, with some additional platform being installed with bases for electrical equipment, probably pumps and heat exchangers as well. Good view across part one, back to part two, and the work that's being done on the right-hand side of the screen to take up that asphalt. In addition to that, more trench work, utilities, forms, and more here on the south side of the building itself. So I pulled away and heading off to the east because I want to show you, and also for myself, check on the status of this old workshop. As you can tell, it's related to the concrete batch plant. This used to be the Martin Marietta workshop for and repair facility for all of their cement trucks, and also kind of this pavilion at the bottom of the screen. It looks to me definitely like with the bins, the utility work inside, and just the general clearing out of all of these facilities. This is being prepared for demolition. This is one of the very last structures or complexes that existed well before Giga Texas. And as we've been talking about with expansion work all throughout this east side, this is probably time for that to go. Also, this large amount of dirt continues to grow in size. What is the purpose of this? I'm not really sure, other than for right now storage, but it'll be something I will continue to check on periodically. So a lot of changes here on the far east side. Now the south part of crash test facility, this foundation continues to get a lot more work. We see a concrete vault with manhole covers been added into that excavation. Some of the yellow moisture barrier is still just sort of sitting onto the forms. Looks like some conduit on the bottom, and we'll see some additional work here preparing for rebar throughout this entire section, and hopefully we'll get an idea of what it is meant to be. I'll briefly fly over the crash test facility where you see 17 Cybercabs and the crates that have parts for the Cybercabs all going under, having had some of the testing done for certification and final preparations before of construction. All of these transformers are destined for Cortex 2's west side, where we saw all the piers being installed. And I decided I wanted to continue to fly up here on the northeast corner past all of the concrete debris and the old smokestack for the batch plant because of this very interesting clearing. Now, I'm going to kind of maneuver around here. We can see Lone Tree Field up on the right. We can see the rental equipment lot, and on the bottom with all of the green bins, the temporary recycling facility that has been used for breaking down a lot of the containers and wooden crates from equipment that's being brought into the factory. As I kind of continue to maneuver around in the middle of the screen in the tree area, we can see more work that's been done inside there to reclaim that for eventual construction. And as I kind of turn back around, this clearing is kind of starting to look like it's maybe for construction. We saw some graders working on this kind of rectangular site on my previous video. Not much of that today, but it is something interesting. And since we have so many different potential construction projects coming up this year, it's something I definitely want to keep an eye on. So now that I've finished up that northeast corner, I'll bring the drone up higher. We're going to fly along the north section of the Cortex 2 and all of the construction site and head over to the electrical switchyard where there are some big developments today. So you can tell, there's more of the steel superstructure has been installed. I'm going to maneuver over towards the center part to show you the ground level cable tray that continues to be extended to the north, and what it looks like from about that control trailer heading all the way to the south. So that work definitely continues. We can see more of the steel items for more A-frames on the ground, some more excavation work by the V-type circuit breakers, another cable tray on the ground. It's extending from the control room all the way over to this part of the site, and with a concrete truck nearby, more of the steel parts, delivery a truck, and work on the slab here and catch basins for the third transformer. The other big item that I want to show you is the big deliveries of these wooden crates. This is more of the equipment that will be needed to assemble that second transformer. Once it's complete, it will look a lot like the one nearby it and the other three on the older part of the switch yard. Then I expect to see a kind of a blast wall constructed in between each of them, very similar to what you see at the center top of the screen. Also, a good look here at the connecting trench or tunnel with cables on the cable holders, those yellow items, and this connecting both of the vaults together. I'll zoom in here and you get a good view of the work with those ground level cable trays. On the left is the original, on the right is the new, and you can get a sense of how they're tying together and how it's all going to look once it is all completed. And finally, just a good comparison of the transformer number 1 and its assembly, and transformer 2 as it's beginning to get its equipment for that assembly. So with that, I'll bring the drone up to a higher altitude. We'll kind of do a pirouette around looking at the entire site and kind of pull away with a nice overall view of all the places that we visited today. I hope that you found this information helpful and informative. And as always, thank you very much for your support and for watching. Have a great week.